So picture this. It's 1965, and a young Maori scholar, Dr. Patrick Hohepa, submits his PhD dissertation at Indiana University. Now, this wasn't just some dusty academic paper. This was a game changer. It was the very first modern deep dive into the structure of Maori sentences, a real cornerstone for the language's future. You see, his mission wasn't just about getting a degree. It was about securing the very soul of his language.
And this quote, right from the dissertation itself, really gets to the heart of the matter. This wasn't just about grammar rules and sentence diagrams. No way. This work was a powerful act of Maori tonga, that pride in being Maori. It was linguistics as an act of cultural survival.
Okay, so let's get into it. Who was this scholar, and what kind of world was he walking into when he took on this mission?
This is our guy, Dr. Patrick Wahanga Hohepa. For him, Maori wasn't just a language to be studied, it was the language he grew up with, the rhythm of his childhood. But to truly protect it, he traveled literally halfway across the globe to Indiana University, which was a huge hub for linguistics, to learn how to map out the language that he already knew by heart.
And believe me, the clock was ticking. By the 1960s, there were only about 100,000 speakers left. So to make sure the language would actually thrive, not just barely survive, its complex, beautiful structure had to be documented and fast.
Now, Hohepa wasn't exactly starting from square one. As you can see from this timeline, people had been trying to describe Maori since way back in 1815. But look closer at what they were focusing on. The earlier works, even the one by his own teacher, were all about sounds and the little parts of words. Hohepa, though, he was going for the big prize, the architecture of the entire sentence.
And you've got to know, he was not on this journey alone. His work was so deeply connected to his community. He dedicated his dissertation to his teacher, but his studies, his travel, all of it was funded by Maori organizations. This wasn't just his personal project. This was a mission with the full backing of his people.
So, to really appreciate the brilliance of what Hohepa did, we have to understand what was going on in the world of linguistics back in the 60s. It was basically an intellectual battlefield, a time of massive revolution. At that point, linguists were pretty much split into two camps. The first was called item and arrangement. Think of it like this. You look at a finished building, and you just make a list of all the bricks and where they are. It just describes what's there. The second camp was item and process. This is more like having the recipe. It gives you the rules for how to actually combine all the ingredients to create the building. And the biggest, most powerful recipe out there was this brand new theory, transformational generative grammar, or TG. This was Noam Chomsky's baby, and it was so huge, so influential, that people said it had an eclipsing stance over everything else. The battle lines were drawn, and you were pretty much expected to pick a side.
But Hohepa remembered some wise words from about a decade earlier. A linguist named Charles Hockett had warned against this whole us versus them thing, calling for an eventual reintegration. So while pretty much everyone else was digging in their heels, Hohepa had this light bulb moment. What if the answer wasn't to choose a side, but to build a bridge between them?
And that single insight, that brilliant idea, led him to create something truly unique and incredibly powerful for describing the Maori language.
Here's the genius of it. Hohepa just refused to choose. He didn't pick one model and throw the other one out. Nope. He basically took out his toolbox and decided to build something brand new, using the best parts from all of them.
He called it a profile generative grammar. Just think of it like a custom-built toolkit, designed specifically for Maori. He pulled in methods from all the big theories, ISA, IP, TG, you name it. The goal was to build a model that actually fit the language, instead of trying to shove the language into a box that didn't quite fit.
And with this amazing new toolkit, his goal was crystal clear, to finally map out the entire architecture of the Maori sentence. He was moving past just looking at individual bricks and beams, and was now drawing up the blueprint for the whole magnificent structure. Okay, so that's the big picture. But what does this grammar actually tell us about how Maori works on the ground? Let's zoom in on a perfect example of what he uncovered.
What it does is reveal these elegant, totally predictable systems that were just hiding there in plain sight.
Let's start with the syllable, the absolute basic building block of every single word. He showed that every syllable follows one simple, beautiful formula, an optional consonant, a required vowel, and then maybe an optional second vowel. That's it. CVV. So elegant, so simple.
Building on that, he showed that word stress, which syllable you emphasize, is anything but random. It's completely predictable. It just follows three simple rules, in order.
First, you check for the first long syllable, one that has 2 vowels. If you find one, boom, that gets the stress. If not, you move to Rule 2. Find the first syllable with a cluster of 2 different vowels. And if you don't find that either, then Rule 3 kicks in. The stress just defaults to the very first syllable of the word. Simple as that.
And check it out, here's the system in action. For ware and tangata, there are no long syllables or special vowel clusters, so they follow Rule 3, stress on the first syllable. But in a word like maata, that first syllable ma is long, so Rule 1 applies. And then you have kaiyawa. No long syllables, but kai is the first cluster of different vowels, so Rule 2 takes over. It's a perfect, logical, beautiful system.
So, by uncovering these incredible systems, from the tiniest syllable all the way up to the full sentence, what was the real, lasting impact of Hohepa's work?
Well, the legacy is just immense. This wasn't just another grammar book. It was the first modern, really comprehensive look at Maori syntax ever created, and it's still a landmark study today. It gave a solid, scientific foundation that became an absolutely essential tool for teaching, for learning, and ultimately for bringing the language back to life.
But beyond all the science, this was a really pioneering moment. I mean, think about it. This was a Maori scholar taking the knowledge he had in his bones, his own native language, and analyzing it using the most advanced scientific tools on the planet. He proved that traditional knowledge and modern science could come together to create something incredibly powerful and totally new.
So Hohepa's dissertation, even all these years later, leaves us with a really important question for today. We've seen the blueprint he created, this scientific map of a language, but it really makes you think, in this global fight to preserve culture, what's the real power in just describing a language? How does that active description actually help to keep it alive?